Do you need a Sorceress build after the massive nerf to Ice Sorc? I'm going to go over both potential builds that you can chase after, one with a one-shot potential and another one with insane map clearing. Both will have really high single target damage, as well as great AoE potential and AoE damage. We'll cover both ways to get both builds that will require different resources each, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, brothers? Should be back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Path of Exile 2. Okay, so let's just get into the builds. I'm going to be covering two different builds here. The reason why is these both will require different resources. Now, if you have plenty of gold or a specific resource, that will depend on which build more than likely you're going to want to go, and also depending on what playstyle you'll like. So I'm going to showcase both builds to you throughout this video, but I'm going to go over the build one by one. Okay, so jumping over to the Fire Sorc build. Now this one is quite insane and is really actually fun to play overall. This one will cost you not as much gold per se. You will have to do both respecking and as well as get an equipment or a unique. Now you can get this fairly easily. I'll leave a link down below to where to obtain this unique. That's the only problem, is that you will need to both use your gold as well as a resource. More than likely you're going to need to spend exalted orbs to get this. I had to pay 2 for mine. You might be able to get it for 1. I wouldn't pay any more than 3 though. And it is fairly easy to use the website. Maybe I'll include a little tutorial. You just basically refresh the page. You'll see when there's new items being posted. And you can just click Whisper once you log in with your Path of Exile account. And it will actually just send a Whisper immediately from that website. You can also copy it to clipboard and send it in game. What I like to do, or what seemed to be the most successful, was to whisper somebody and then to invite them to a party, and then they immediately joined. So it seemed like that was the faster way to actually get an item other than just whispering. Okay, so let's just get onto the build, as we've got a lot to go through in this video. First up, freezing shards. I'm not even using this on my bar right now. There is absolutely no need for it, but you can use it. It again is just my stat that gives me +3 to all spells. Next up, sigil power is pretty good on bosses. It will give you some buffs there, so I do have that equipped. We also have Elemental Storm as my ascendancy is, but we'll rework that in a different section of the passive tree. Next up, we do have Frost Bomb here. Now this is where we actually get into what we need overall. For Elemental Storm, we're taking Frost Nexus and Magnified Effect, but it doesn't matter too much. For Frost Bomb, we're taking Fast Forward. I really like this one, makes the effect happen a lot faster. And then we also have Strip Away. So for Frost Bomb, we just put it down. It's going to happen really, really fast and gives some decent damage. We want that exposure effect. I do believe people have commented on this that it doesn't give as much because the duration gets lowered. I think it still provides the same amount. Moving on, though, we have Frostwall. Now, Frostwall is one of our main abilities here. It's going to provide a ton of clarity on this build overall. You'll see how it kind of works. I have Font of Mana slotted in here, as well as Icicle, so it gives the crystals less life. I really wouldn't waste a passive ability on that. You'll see there's a passive thing here. I really don't think you need to bring the ice crystals down any more than this overall, because you'll see one hit of them will actually destroy it. So I'm not really sure why people are specking into it. I feel like it's a waste. So I have modified this build a little bit to where I feel it is a little bit more optimized overall. We do cast down a Frost Wall and we use our Fireball ability. We are just going to send shards out everywhere, and they're basically going to expand all over the map. In fact, if we get in here, we can see it really good, where they're just kind of shooting all around. Now, if there's especially mobs in, it's going to go absolutely haywire and nuts. As you see, protect on the boss here very fast. For Frost Wall, again, Font of Mana and Icicle, and then onto Fireball. As you saw our little cast there, we're going to take in Scatter Shot, and we're also going to take Unleash. That's going to be the seal ability. If you're having mana issues, I have mine slotted in here, but you can take Arcane Tempo instead in that little slot there. That won't cost you as much mana as Unleash, but for right now, I don't mind it. And then also we have Wild Shards, which are going to have a 20% chance to fire 8 additional projectiles. Very nice here overall. Again, that's where we're getting that insane kind of cast back over all of them. Next up, we take Hypothermia, because we do have a gear piece. So that gear piece that I was talking about, which does make this build utilized, probably should have brought this up at the start, but this thing that's being utilized is this Blue Flame Bracers. This is so we don't have to respec as much as the other build, and essentially this is going to do 100% of fire damage converted to cold damage. So now you're going to do everything's going to be pooled into cold damage. So all your passive stuff you're going to want to pool into cold damage. There's multiple reasons for this. This is a really good unique. Again, it's only going to cost you between 1 and 3 exalted orbs. Moving on, though, again, as I said, we take Hypothermia. That's going to give us a 25% increased curse effect overall. Really, really nice there, and we want to do that for our cold. And then these last two here are my experimental stuff. There is cast on freeze, but it doesn't really work a
ton. Now we're using Comet obviously, and then Impetus as well as Inspiration. Now this is going to have a 40% less cost, so you're not using a ton of mana. Raging Spirit, which I've been experimenting with. Raging Spirit actually bugs my game out like crazy. You'll see this really quickly. I think if I can get this to work, it makes my game slow down. I have some footage of it where it's just, yeah, it's just absolutely slowing down right now. And I have a pretty decent GPU, 4070 Ti Super, so the fact that my game's slowing down from this is a little bit insane. The reason why I liked Raging Spirit is that Cast on Freeze wasn't really utilized a ton. It does apply every now and then, but I kind of liked that this had a drop modifier for the slain monsters here, 12%. And I was kind of trying to experiment with this. I'll see if I can get this to work, but it does seem like this is very buggy right now. I was just doing some experimenting stuff. Okay, moving on, we do have our passive tree. We'll go over this very quickly. Most off, we're just kind of coming through here and grabbing up some crit hit chance stuff. We're also grabbing a spell damage and reduced, a little bit of reduced cast speed, but we're grabbing more spell damage. We're coming through here, grabbing maximum shield and mana, as well as traversing up here and getting some mana regeneration. We might eventually lean into these again. We did respec here. We took off points here. We took off some points here, and we took 2 points away from here. We also came back and took all of these points back. Now this is from my arcane spell, as I don't have enough gold to respec it, but I actually kind of like this. I think this actually works well. This has a 20% increased projectile speed. We also have some stuff here like the skill duration, so I think that actually helps the fireballs a lot. Maybe not, maybe it doesn't keep them out and about, but I figured it did, so I actually do kind of like this here, so I'm keeping this on as well. This was learned from my Archmage. Moving on though, we are taking the cold abilities here, so you don't have to respec this portion. We're also jumping into here and taking the exposure stuff here. This is going to give us a lot of elemental damage, and then unfortunately these points here I couldn't refund just yet, but these were in here. I might put these back eventually, or refund these and put them somewhere else and try to get some more crit, like for example down in here. More than likely I will do that once I can do that. So I'll put the updated skill tree overall in the link to the video, and I'll delete these 4 points here and kind of add them over here, so that way you can see that working well. It does work well with what I have right now. This is a very decent skill tree. We also do have my Stormweaver abilities here. Again, you're more than likely going to want to go into these abilities and get the Arcane Surge, these two, and then these two on the right here to get the Elemental Resistance build up. Elemental Storm is okay, but not really utilized for this build especially.
Here we do have the Lightning Sork. Now this does have massive single target damage potential. My gear is not very good and not fully tethered to this. To achieve this, as my level is a little bit lower, but I've been trying to do some catch-up work with some other things. But I will have a full skill tree for like a level 70 and 80. Will give you that potential one-shot mechanic. So first we'll go over all the gems. I'm going to do this very quickly so we can do it very fast. And then I'll showcase how to actually play the build. So first up, let's just jump into our spell slots. We'll see how the build actually does function overall. Where we do have freezing shards here, but this is not utilized. We just want a really good staff with plus to all spells. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I believe they go all the way up to 8, 9, and 10, even beyond that. So you can get this really high. You really just want plus to all spells, and then you also might want some mana regeneration and as well as spell damage. So try to get a staff with that. It doesn't really matter for this. Either build is not going to utilize any type of staff ability, so don't worry on that. Next up, we do have a Sigil of Power. This main ability is to just give us a damage buff. Overall, this is really going to help here, so that I do have it swapping to a different staff to apply Sigil of Power. That is my secondary staff right here. That will put that on, but as soon as I cast another ability, it's going to swap back to my other staff. Next up, we take Elemental Storm. This is from our Ascendancy, but is not needed. But I do take Frost Nexus here, as well as Magnified Effect. Just gives a bigger AoE damage. This does actually do fairly well on the Lightning Sork. Next up, we do have Ball Lightning here, combined with Scatter Shot. That's going to allow for multiple casts of it. So you'll see here Lightning will cast a ton. And you also can see that we also sometimes have a lot cast out. That's because we have Unleash with it. Unleash is going to give us more additional seals with it and cast out a bunch. These you can also teleport to with our Time Warp here, or our Lightning Warp. So a really nice one here. So we do have Lightning Warp for this one as well. And then we are taking Overcharge. There are going to be a few other gems that I will include in the build link that you can slot into these. But again, I don't have everything overall. Some of them do require like higher strength and dexterity that I just haven't been able to manage right now because of all the respecking. Next up here, we do have Spark. Now, this is our main ability with this build overall. This is our main AoE that we're going to be utilizing a ton. And you see it's covering basically the entire map. It does do a decent chunk of damage, and it really doesn't require a whole lot of mana. You'll see overall we can cast this pretty infinitely. There are some things in our skill tree that are going to apply to this. However, for Spark, we're going to take Arcane Tempo, then we're going to take Acceleration, and then next up we're going to take Persistence. Again, giving us a faster cast speed. We're going to get more projectile speed that's going to allow the sparks to travel faster, and then also the duration of them last longer. Next up here we take Mana Tempest. This is going to be another buff, so we're combining this with 2 buffs here to get that one-shot mechanic potential, which will apply with the Lightning Warp. You'll see on some bosses where we can do some really high damage with it. If you do have some better gear than me, you will do a lot of damage with it, and you can potentially one-shot. It will add up there. And then we're also taking Premeditation, which skills and power by supported skill damage will deal 15% more damage. Next up we have Orb of Storms, and we're also going to take supported skills, do more lightning exposure here, essential resistances, where we're going to cast that on a boss to remove the resistances, and then we also have Strip Away, which is going to get that exposure to be a little bit higher. Then we're taking Conductivity. Conductivity is a curse that's going to remove even more resistances. This is basically like hypothermia on frost. And then we also have the 25% increased effect with the supported curses, so heightened curse. Next up for our buff and spirit, we're taking Mana Remnants. However, if you do have the spirit needed for it, you're more than likely going to take Archmage. This is if you have completed the Act 3 boss. Obviously, I'm working on Act 3 still right now, so I haven't completed the Act 3 boss on Cruel difficulty, but once you do, you'll get enough spirit, or you should potentially with some gear. Just get 10 spirit on gear, and then you can get Archmage. But for right now, if you don't have that and you are leveling up still like me or transferring builds, then you can swap to just do Arcane Remnants. We'll give you a little bit of buff there. Then we're taking Lightning Conduit. That again will give us that one-shot mechanic, which we have Hourglass. We're not really going to be casting the Lightning Conduit as much, so we don't really mind it being on a 10-second cooldown. We just want the damage. We also have Inevitable Critical here, or you can take Super Critical. Both of these are really good options here for Lightning Conduit. Again, I don't have 3 gem slots with this. It's just way too much investment for me to use my Lesser Jewel Orbs right now on this stuff, and so, but if you need to, you can do that, and then also take Super Critical. And then last up here, we're taking Lightning Warp with Overcharge. And essentially that's allowing us to cast our lightning balls, and then we can teleport to them. You can also lightning up an enemy, you'll see, kind of have something on their skull. If you teleport to them, you're basically going to one-shot them. It's kind of like Cold Snap for lightning. It's a pretty decent ability. Okay, so for our skill tree, we'll jump into it very quickly. We go into our passives here. We're basically focusing on getting critical. We also want a little bit of mana regeneration, not a crazy ton. That's what we have removed essentially. I've kind of been going back into this tree, but I have removed some of the mana regeneration. I've also removed some of our elemental damage that we got over here in favor of some critical stuff over here. We've also jumped around, taken everything out of cold, and we've respec'd into lightning damage, and then we've also taken projectile speed and skill duration. So this one here is the skill duration nodes, and then we've also taken projectile speed up here. Eventually you'll probably come down here and get some lightning nodes. I might include those in the build link and try to show you that we'll also do. The other one for the one-shot mechanic, in order to have the one-shot mechanic work appropriately, is you're eventually going to want to come down this tree and head up into this section here and get these 3 in the V shape, and then you're also going to want to jump down, and you're going to want to get this tree here. So you're going to come down eventually to this side. It's going to cost a lot of points, a lot of obviously respec, but if you are at that level, you'll come down into this section here, and you'll get this cast critical damage, and that is enemies at full life. This is like 160% that will do to the boss. This is going to give you that one-shot mechanic potential. However, for now, because I don't have enough points here, and I kind of wanted some more energy shield for maps, etc., or at least during the Act 3 stuff, I've come over here and grabbed some additional energy shield, and I've also jumped over here and grabbed some elemental damage and some casting speed. I feel like this is a better for AoE, so obviously this build does need to be worked on for its single target damage, but that's eventually what you will go to. And then as of right now, I haven't leveled my Ascendancy as I've been trying to switch around, but more than likely you're going to be taking Arcane Surge and Elemental Surge here, so I will include those in the build link to kind of showcase that these are the 4 nodes up here that you're really going to be taking instead of doing Elemental Storm, although Elemental Storm is actually not that bad for this build and overall pretty decent. Overall though, it should cover it. There are a few tips with gearing. Again, you just want your plus modifier to your spells on your staff. It doesn't matter what one you're using because you're not using auto abilities. Also, you can try to get that +1 level on your amulet. That's another good one here. Mana regeneration on rings. Everything else is just kind of is what it is. You can pause the video if you'd like to see what I have on. It's nothing too special here. That should cover for today's video though. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and until the next one. Deuces.